Welcome to Buddy Read Adventures. I'm Danielle, and I am here for the theories.
And I'm Stacy, and I'm here for the vibes. And we are two besties who live across the country from each other who love doing buddy reads together.
We are so glad that you can be here on this adventure with us today for Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood, Part 1 only. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow us for even more.
And just a friendly reminder that Danielle and I don't intend to curse or swear, but we are adults who will be talking about an adult book.
This will have spoilers for all of House of Earth and Blood Part 1 only. We have not read beyond that yet. That will be The Hollow is Part 1. So if you haven't yet read at least Part 1, The Hollow, please go read it, then come back and watch this at a later time.
Ooh, gosh. I feel like we kind of need to start with additional context. So, wanted to share that in addition to physically reading the book along with Danielle, that I've also decided to listen to the graphic audio production as well. I wanted to just really immerse myself into the world, and I've been a fan of graphic audio for a while. That's how I consumed ACOTAR. So I thought, what a great way to complement Crescent City.
So if you have read the other two books in the series, as well as finished this first one, enjoy all of our crazy thoughts and theories from just Part 1. But this is my last series in the SJM Massiverse series. I have read ACOTAR as well as Throne of Glass. So this is in third-person POV, which I've noticed is what SJM usually does tend to write in. ACOTAR is kind of a little bit of an outlier with books 1 through 3, and at least Feyre's point of view in Frost and Starlight, that book 4 novella. So everything else she does is in third person. So it's really interesting because most people do start off with ACOTAR, even though that wasn't the first series, it was Throne of Glass. So I really wasn't as overwhelmed as I thought I would be, at least within the first 90 pages, which is Part 1. Everyone just talks about how much just world building and knowledge dumping is in there, but it didn't seem quite as bad to me, at least yet, as I kind of was making it up. I don't know. What did you think, Stacy?
Yeah, I agree. I think that was also part of the reason why I wanted to do the audiobook as well, is I was like, let me just really get into the mind. And I love with graphic audio how it is with a full cast. So the voices are distinct, there are sound effects. I just felt really integrated, and seeing the text as well while I was reading it kind of reinforced some of the things, because I am one who can either read ahead or skip ahead if I'm just looking at the text. So it was really nice to have that integrated. And I would say that, to your point, I almost left the first part being like, I must have missed something. There's clearly things that I know I haven't picked up on yet. And even some of the explanation of some of the things that we really haven't seen yet, I'm like, okay. And in my head, I've sort of just filed that away for later. So I know it's going to pick up the pace. It did take a little bit to kind of get into the groove, but I feel like once I was in the groove, I was like, oh, okay, this is digestible. This feels really good.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I'm sure I missed a lot, but I at least felt like I could follow along with what was going on. And that's what I was concerned that I wasn't going to be able to do that. That's how hyped up the just intensity of the first 100 pages or so people talk about is.
Right.
So I actually felt it was good that I could at least follow along. I would say that this is probably not a good series for somebody who is just stepping into fantasy, though. I think having an understanding of the different species and traditional rules of fantasy was absolutely very important, especially since we immediately see it's not just kind of one being. Like Fae or something, there's a lot. There's the shifters, right? There are angels. There's all these different characters and sprites, right? That have different species and the different houses that they're divided into. So it definitely helps to have a general understanding of those rules and those species kind of characteristics and rules that they follow within most fantasies. So I think that did at least help us. So I wouldn't recommend this as a first fantasy read for somebody. Definitely something once you've read a couple and kind of gotten it in there. I did like it better than I expected. I didn't expect to dislike it, but I liked it a lot more than I thought. I don't think it's going to top in the Massiverse for me, Throne of Glass. That is my Roman Empire.
Mm.
But I did like this quite a bit.
Certainly invested. Like,
Oh, yes.
even after, which we're going to get to, all that happens in this part one, so much happens, and enough that I'm equally destroyed and hooked.
Yes. Yes, we will talk about
I am
that
equally
soon.
devastated and also can't get enough. So we're off to a great start.
Yes. But with the urban fantasy and having like the 4 different houses
Mm.
and the species are divided within that, it felt a little like mafia. Didn't it to you? Like I got a little bit of that vibe, especially like, oh, I've been hired to do this, or I'm an underling for this house or that house. It felt very mafia inspired.
I could see that.
And Lunathian feels very New Orleans to me. And even the name Crescent City, which is nickname for New Orleans in reality, kind of adds to that. I did go up and kind of do some research to see, did SJM actually base it on? And a lot of people actually got that same vibe that I was kind of finding when I started looking around. But I did find a Today Show interview where SJM says that it's really based on New York City and then other cities like London, Melbourne, Edinburgh. And so I was like, oh, okay. All right. I would not have guessed that, but really cool. Especially when you also look at the map and everything at the beginning of the book. That's kind of what I kind of got from it. But
Well,
yeah.
and like that big city like feel, you know? And I was going to say, since you've been to New Orleans, kind of speaking to that, but also like, you know, we've been to New York, like, you know, I live in the DC area, like this like city scape, and even in parts of Colorado, you know, like this like built up metro areas or built up cityscapes, right, of what people experience is cool to see how she's playing with that in the story.
I also thought it was really interesting to have this world set up to have started very much like our reality, where it's humans and just animals that would exist here in reality as well. But then these other species kind of came in and absolutely completely took over. I want to know, why did they come? Why did their worlds, their realms, their universes kind of get them here? Like what happened there? That's a big question that I have. I don't know if we'll actually get the answer to that, but I feel like something happened and they had to evacuate their homes, and this is where they kind of came. That's what I felt. I don't know about if you kind of had those thoughts too.
Well, I guess I didn't so much question it as opposed to just like, because you know me, vibing. I'm just here. So I was like, I've accepted this is like the status quo.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? Like, here we are. And I didn't really think past of like, well, how did they get integrated? And like, what was before? I'm just like, we're here. We're like, you know, we're vibing. And so that's my take.
I mean, I accepted it. Absolutely accepted it. I was just like, I want this backstory. You mentioned it. Is this a little nugget for later?
Right. Will we get more? Will we get more?
As we started going in, I mean, before I even read the series, you know, when I bought the books, you know, and I know you have the other cover, but my cover is kind of right back up here, kind of on the shelf. I was really surprised to find out that they were urban fantasies. That's not the vibe I got from the covers at all.
Yeah.
But they're gorgeous. I love.
They're
yes,
sort
I
of,
love the covers.
Let's just for a second give the people a little taste.
They're gorgeous, but they don't scream urban fantasy. So I was kind of really surprised to learn that. It feels a little bit more space and otherworldly. So I'm really interested to see how the story and Lunathian might really speak to these covers as we continue to learn more and go throughout more of the series.
Absolutely.
I also was not expecting us to get the 2 most famous quotes that I am aware of in part 1. We got Light It Up, and then we also got, what did we get, Stacey? What did we get?
Rune Dannon, Crown Prince of
Prince
the
of the
Velbar
Velbaran Fae.
and like we have to like do like the music that goes along with it.
I remember our texts going back and forth. I was like, okay, where are you? And I had hit it and you hadn't. I was like, okay. And then you later were like, I found it. I found it.
I've made it to yeah, I've made it to this pivotal moment, and we weren't sure we were going to get it. We thought he doesn't arrive until later in the series. We're like, no, he's made it. He is on the page. He's made it.
I mean, he's mentioned in what, like chapter 1 or
Yeah,
2, and then he
early.
actually shows up
Mhm.
really, towards the end of this. So I was really surprised that he was mentioned as early as he was and then showed up as early as he was. But this just goes to show what you are taking out of context when you are just looking at all the stuff that you randomly see online.
It's true. Well,
So,
and we both are desperately trying hard not to get any spoilers because the series has been out for a while. And anytime, naturally, anytime you're engaging in a series, the algorithm is going to feed you more of that series or that information or
mhm.
people talking about. That was something that I've been conscious of as we've moved through things. So, and part of that is to say that I am glad that neither of us knew that the big event that happens in part one was going to happen, that it was a shock. Yeah,
Yeah,
I had to stop. I had to put the book down. I had to like get up. I was destroyed. I was absolutely destroyed. So I was
yeah.
glad that that was not spoiled for me.
Yeah. Jess, who designed our logo for Buddy
Mm,
Read Adventures, she has read the series and is absolutely in love with it. And I told her I was starting to read it, and she's like, chapter 1 is like, and then is kind of a little slow for a bit. It's okay.
mm.
And then I finished, I was like, Jess, I don't know what chapter 1 were you talking about, but the whole part 1. She goes, oh,
Part
I meant
one.
part 1. I meant part 1. So I was like, okay. Yeah.
Part one. Buckle
So,
up, folks.
oh my God. That was a ride I was
Buckle
not
up.
prepared to go on.
I was not prepared.
Not prepared. Yeah.
We should know better, honestly. Like, even I should know better. You definitely should know better given you've read two series. But even reading Akatar, I was like, I should have known better. I should have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know the last 100-ish pages. At least I know that. Last 100-ish pages of SJM is going to be chaos. Let us now turn to favorite moments and quotes from the series. So I really early on did really appreciate book guarding from Syrinx the Chimera. And I would love to have Duncan, my chinchilla, guard my books, but dude actually chews on my books. So he is banned from hopping in the bookcase bottom shelf because he's actually destroyed a couple of books.
Oh
So
no.
Duncan is not a book
Not
guardian,
not
but
little
I did
nugget.
like that they had one. But it doesn't seem like Cyrix actually wants to guard the books. He's just
Mm.
kind of there, which I thought was funny as well, but appreciated the attempt. I also thought it was very interesting that a fire sprite, Lahaba, is minding the books. So I'm really interested to see how that works out. Is there some sort of magic involved that protects the fire, the books from the fire? I was just like, how are they
Mm-hmm.
not completely up in smokes? How does this make sense? But that was like my big question, but I did
That's a
appreciate,
good point.
Cyrix.
I just
But
was again
clearly,
vibing. I was like accepting it all. I was like, okay.
well, of course I had to think about it because of Duncan, right?
Mm, that's fair.
Little dude. Love him, but he just wants to eat everything. So, as I was also reading, I couldn't figure out the CBD acronym. I was like,
Mm.
did we get that? I kept flipping back trying to figure it out. And I kept looking at the map. I was like, okay, it's a place. Let me go back to the map. And then I finally found it quite some time later, and it was the Central Business District. I was making up all these crazy, outlandish names in my mind and I was like, oh, that's it. I mean, cool, but I thought it'd be a little bit more interesting of a name.
Oh my gosh, me too. It took an embarrassingly amount of time for me to get
Yeah.
what that was.
Yeah. So maybe that was the one hard part for me where I was like, what is going on? What is this that everyone talks about? That I was in that moment there. But also getting information on the drop. That was a really
Mm.
interesting concept. And I'm really curious to see more about this deadly plunge that kind of stops aging. Was not really expecting that to be what the drop is. I don't really know what I thought the drop would be, but it definitely wasn't that. But it's a really interesting concept, and I do want to learn more about that. And I know we will get a lot more of that as we go throughout potentially this book, but also the series for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And especially because there's like so much talk about the drop and it's clear that like you pick someone who's important to you to make the drop happen or be successful because Bryce and Danica were like, no, we're doing it together. Like, this is our thing. And I think it just like echoed my feelings for them from the beginning. I was like, one of two minds. I was either shipping for them to become lovers and have it just be like the best thing ever for the whole series. Or I was like, you know what? Or I would be equally happy if we just get a book that just comments on the love we have for our like best friends and have that just be this like powerful, I know, this like powerful, like thing that is discussed because we don't talk about it enough, and you could just tell right away, like I believed it from the beginning. They've been best friends. They're like their ride or die. They are everything to each other. They like comment how they've like, they're just it for each other. And I was like, yeah, that's great. So when we get to the moment where Danica's no longer with us, I was destroyed. I was destroyed. I was distraught. But I think for me, the favorite moment part is just the love that they had for each other and how much their friendship was mentioned and how it was mentioned, and just like the amount of like ribbing each other and kind of like teasing each other that they do, but also that they were willing to do like any, like it was that like
Mhm.
friendship was so strong. So that was like the good part for me, is like seeing their love and friendship for each other.
And I love you, bestie.
I know, I love you too.
Ugh. Yeah, when I read chapter 5, I was out at my pool, sitting out at my pool.
Mm.
There were other people there. So I finished chapter 5, and my reaction was, well, shit. That was it. And I just was like stunned, staring out at these kids jumping in the pool. I was like, fuck. I just was not expecting that. I was just so completely like blown away. I really thought Danica was going to be a larger character in the series as a whole, like a
Yes.
larger presence. And this is obviously a very big catalyst for the series and for Bryce and for Hunt and everything. But
Mm.
I thought Danica would physically be present in more of the series. And I felt so bad for Connor. I mean, I
Oh my god.
knew it wasn't going to be her and Connor. I mean, I knew that. But still, I kind of
Still.
really liked Connor. And I should have known, SJM, having read 2 other series, what was probably going to happen. But I am back and forth about whether I am happy that he got to have
Mm.
Bryce like acknowledge that Bryce accepted a date with him, or not, because he doesn't get it. It just was so devastating. I was chapter 5. Well, shit. That's all I've got. And I was like,
Yeah.
they've got to come back. This has got to be like a setup. It's got to be fake. It's got to be a stage. It's got
We're
to
in
be magic
denial.
involved.
Yeah.
I was so in denial. And
We're
then
in
I was like,
denial.
and then part 1 ends with her going to
Mm.
Danica's grave. And I was like, nope, we're really dead. We are dead and in the ground. There was a body on the page. It is done. Sabine, mom, has acknowledged, like, oh,
But it
I don't know.
also kind of reinforces like how invested we were in all of these characters by chapter 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that isn't crazy.
It's I cried. Like I was like pulled apart because I start thinking about like the people in my life, right? Like I start going back to like how would I feel if
Yeah,
my bestie, right? Like, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't think about this. This is too much.
I
This
know.
is too
I was
much.
thinking about that. I was like, Stacy, you need to live forever.
It's not, I can't, right. Like, no one can go first, right? Like, this is, So, anyway, it's the power that we all have. And this like connection with this story was like incredible. So, anyway, just like reinforces that message.
So rare that you can find a story that you are hooked on it and so invested in the characters so early on. And this is absolutely one of them. And I also remember having this feeling when I read CC Hartley's Era Stardust and Secrets. I was like,
Mm.
by chapter 3, I messaged, CC, and I was like, I am hooked. What did you put in this, right? So there are so few books that I can really say that like really happened with.
Mhm.
And these are definitely two that come to mind for
Mm.
sure. And it, yeah, just speaks to the power of really not only info dumping world information, but also just really creating very complex and emotional characters in such a short space.
Yes. Yes.
But then we get Hunt
Mhm.
appearing as well, and his tattoos. I thought that was a really interesting idea to have them really magically bind him in a way, not completely. He can still use some magic and things like that, but not to the full extent. This really does make sense in
Mhm.
terms of a strategy, a technique, magic, all of that. But I'm really surprised that I haven't seen it more often in fantasy, or at least the books that and the stories that I have read.
Mm.
I have seen it in one other one that I can really remember, and I actually read that earlier this year. You have not read that series yet, Stacey, so I'm not going to spoil what series that is because I do
Thank
want you to read that
you.
series.
Thank you.
Um, but that's it. So I just was kind of surprised that I haven't come across that even more, but I really did think it was very interesting. And the fact that Hunt is an angel and
Mm.
that there is like the crown of like, I think thorns, right? That kind of go
Oh, yeah, or
across,
like a
his
band or
forehead.
something? Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so very religious symbology right there in terms of everything, but very interesting that I found. But also Hunt having lightning powers. Yes, please. This is fun. I want to see this. I hope we get to see it at its full power at some point, but just like up his arms the way it was described, I was like, oh, yes, I like this. This
Mhm.
is fun. I wasn't expecting, you know, Rune to be Bryce's half brother. Was just
Mm.
really not expecting that. Was not expecting any sort of familial connection or anything. But then when he comes in and introduces himself as her cousin, I was like, "Oh, that's where you're gonna go with this. That's the story we're pulling out." And it's funny that Hunt and Isaiah seemed to already see through this and be like, I know your family tree, Rune. This is sus. I'm not buying this. This is weird.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it led me to think maybe that this was like, maybe like either an agreed upon term where like whoever Bryce's like their shared father was like, yo, we got to keep this under wraps. You guys can be family, your cousins, whatever. This is what I'm asking of you. Or it's just some sort of like term that the Fae use with family as like, oh, we're cousin. Like it could be one of those two things, right? It's either just like this term people use, or it's like specifically the dad is like, no, I don't want anyone to know she's my daughter. So you guys can be cousins.
I would say I would probably go with the initial kind of thought where it is dad
Mm.
because Hunt and Isaiah are so like, doesn't seem
Yeah,
like it would be a common term.
that's true.
But
That's true.
also, I mean, there's definitely going to be more of a backstory here, more
Hmm.
information to come as to how this all played out and why. But the dad did offer apparently Brace a ton of money to keep quiet about who her father was. And she did not accept that money. So I'm pretty sure that that is where that really came from. But there's obviously much more to that story.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I really, in this chapter, did not appreciate. Oh, Hunt, not a good look, not a good move putting that tracker on Bryce. I get
Mm.
why you did it, but no, I did not like that. Obviously, it's only a couple day tracker. And then when we get to part two, that's 22 months later. So it's going to come back up. I'm sure it's not
Yeah.
going to go well, but that was not a good look, Hunt. Not a good look, not a good
Right.
move.
And it's just like reinforces all of the messaging around like being tracked and like followed and all of these things. So, never never fun.
Hunt, you can take a little L on that one there for us. Some theories, clarifications that we need at this point. And my theory brain was going off the wall. I had questions. I wanted more backstory. You got
This
all
is
those
where
messages, Stacey.
this is where you shine. This is Danielle's part. This is Danielle's part.
Okay. I know this is like really tiny and really small and probably does not have much in terms of significance with this series and the storyline. I need to know more about what Sunball is. For some reason, I'm just kind of envisioning, soccer meets lacrosse. I have no idea why, but I need to know more about what
Mhm.
sunball is. So I
Mhm.
really hope we know what it is. If not, SJM, please tell us what sunball is. I need to know.
We need to visualize it. Any sort of like sporting event, we need to know. We need to know what we're rallying behind. Also related, and I'm sure it's going to come up, is I want to know more about Bryce's dance background. Like, I just want to know more about that for sure. I want that to come up even more. And I think it's something that both you and I are particularly interested in given our dance background. So I'm curious to see how that plays out even further.
Yeah. And it was also very heartbreaking to kind of have her share that she was told over and over, you don't
Mm,
have the body type. And
mhm.
that is something that, I heard because I'm short, right? I
Yeah.
just wasn't tall enough. And
Mhm. I was
it's
very
just so
curvy. So, like, I get it.
yeah, so absolutely frustrating. But yes, I do want more of that. I like that she is still taking dance classes.
Mhm.
And then she even has a friend who actually went
Mhm.
on and made it, which is really cool and is of a species that doesn't normally make the ballet.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more of that as well. But I also have many questions from the end of part 1 at that cemetery. The mist and the creature. I have questions. All the questions.
So many. But I liked the visual. I was here for the visual and the
Yes.
mysterious nature and the gothic nature of it.
Yes, I was just kind of seeing it and envisioning it. It definitely felt a little like New Orleans
Mhm.
vibe right there in that moment. But the mist and a creature also gave me really a little bit of One Dark Window vibes.
Mm.
So, Stacey, you should read
Mhm.
that. It's
Mhm.
so good. So, my questions: what happened? Because part 2 is 22 months later. I need to know. So obviously, we're not going to get that answer right away. I just kind of turned
Right.
the page and saw 22 months later and was like, ugh, dang it. Dang it. This is where my off the wall theories. So, people, if you have read the whole series or read the whole book and you know that, Danielle, what are you thinking? Bear with me. This is all I have is part 1 so far to go off of. Does Bryce have more power than she registered in that test or whatever
Mm.
that she refers to? I kind of like an FMC without some sort of hidden power, but is still very an exceptional character. And I also do want her to have a lot of power and kick people's butts and really kind of be like, yeah, I'm awesome, right?
Mhm.
But does this mean that she's the creature or she controls the creature, maybe? If she does have
Mm.
some sort of hidden power, whether she knows it or maybe not yet, who knows? We'll kind of have to see. Does she not acknowledge, at least from what we get to see in this limited moment, does she not acknowledge this character because of that? And she is in control of it or she is comfortable with it? Or is she just too lost in her grief for Danica
Mm.
and the pack to even notice that it's there? Also, could it possibly be her Fey bio dad? Is that a possibility, right?
Mhm.
So we know, Rune is Prince, so
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
have the same father, so obviously father's like king or
Yeah.
like the prince
Ruler.
below the king. Yeah, something. So I'm wondering if maybe this is some sort of fey power or something like
Mm.
that and it is bio dad in this moment too. Who knows? We'll have to see. I mean, he doesn't want Bryce to acknowledge him.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I went back and was like rereading a little bit this
Mhm.
morning just to get a little bit more context of like that relationship. And he was very controlling and possessive of Bryce's mother. And she was like, no, 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 no. And that's the whole reason why Bryce doesn't want to date anyone
Mm.
other than a
Mhm.
mortal. So I'm kind of wondering, what does he kind of want to acknowledge her, but more in secret? And this is how he does that. I don't know. Really interested to learn what that really kind of means and what their relationship is looking like. So I have all the questions, all the random theories
Totally.
for this, but I want to know what this creature is. Also, was it possibly even the creature that, basically killed everyone in this part?
Mm.
That demon thing that even Hunt couldn't find. So is it that maybe? Who knows?
Gosh. I'm also personally very curious about Bryce's amulet that was given to her by Jessica while she's working in the gallery, because that seems very important. And Danica was always like, never take it off. You have to wear it all the time. So, yeah, I'm sure that's going to come up too.
Yeah, definitely really interesting in terms of that. I had completely forgotten about that until I was reading over your notes a couple of days ago. I was like, "Oh yeah, that amulet. We do need more information on that necklace and what's going on." I feel like the pack is really gone, but I wouldn't be surprised still, like I mentioned earlier, if this was all somehow faked. I'm holding out hope, but I'm also not holding out hope. I'm really torn right now
Yeah.
in terms of this, but it wouldn't entirely surprise me if the pack is really not dead, but also it wouldn't surprise me if they stay dead.
Or did like at least one or two members of the pack make it out and we just can't tell yet? Like, you know what I mean? Like that
Mhm.
might be a possibility.
And Briggs, we know Briggs is going to come into play. I'm sure, will meet Briggs on the page at some point. I need to know more. I mean, we get little snippets of like why he was imprisoned, why he's such a threat, but it still seems like there's more at play. There's a bigger picture here. There's something a little bit more sinister lying under the surface with this. Is he maybe the big bad, at least in this book, if not the series? Like, I need more information on Briggs. I don't have too
Oh,
many
yeah,
theories yet, but I need more.
absolutely. If he's enough to get so much attention where the pack is like freaking out that he's being released, something is going on.
Yeah. And especially, he's immortal, right? So it's just so crazy that
Hmm.
these really powerful beings are so terrified of him. So something
Hmm.
is definitely kind of up. It sounds like he maybe uses like technology and kind of that sort of thing, advanced weaponry, to really
Mm,
be that destructive as a human to these magical creatures.
that's fair.
I always do love the new weird creatures that appear in these SJM books. It's so cool that how she really crafts them into her worlds, and they're
Mm.
so different. So, like the demon that we've already met in this one, I mean, one that Hunt, like I mentioned, couldn't even track down, and Hunt is usually like within a couple hours, walking back in with his trophy,
Mhm, mhm.
all cocky, I got it, it sounds like, but he couldn't even track that down. And everyone is just like, we don't even know what this is. So, yeah, I'm very excited to see these other creatures
Mhm.
that she really brings up. I mean, think about like the surreal and all that stuff
Mm.
from like Akatar, for example. And then for those of you who have read Throne of Glass, there's even a few in there, which is really kind of cool. We also do need more about the objects in the shop, the ones that
Mm.
Lahaba is kind of protecting and minding along with the books, but also the reason like Jessica gave Bryce that necklace that
Mm.
we mentioned.
Mhm.
Clearly these objects are going to come more into play. I have a feeling the books will specifically, but some of these other things, we do have an item missing, it seems like, as well. So I'm very interested to see what this shop really is, what it has, and how that's going to come into play throughout the series, in addition to just this book.
Totally. And just like all the characters that we've been like kind of introduced to, right? That we want to learn more about. I know it's like shifting to where like Hunt's going to get more of a presence. And of course, we want to know more about Rune because, he's getting a lot of attention. But yes, I'm very curious about how it shifts and focusing on them as well.
Yeah, I also think like Danica's sword that
Mm.
was left in the closet in the first couple of chapters. Is it still sitting there? Has somebody
Mhm.
found it? What's going on with that sword? But I feel like that's really Sabine wanted that sword
Mhm.
back. It was like, this is a problem. I mean, she's very angry at Bryce over this as well. And that's a whole nother thing. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's still sitting in there. If Danica and Bryce were the only two who ever went into that closet
Oh, right.
and
Yeah.
Bryce knows it's in there, I just can't bring herself to do it. So
Mm.
I don't know.
Well,
I'm very
yeah.
interested in that one.
And having like to your point, Sabine being like so upset and she thinking that like Bryce stole it in is like one layer, but there's definitely Sabine's going to come back. There's going to be a reckoning somehow, but we're going to get more Sabine for sure. And I'm just also personally very nervous that part 2 is called The Trench. In case anyone's wondering emotionally where I'm at, that's where I'm at. Also, I thought it was interesting, and I'm sure this is going to come up too, that, we keep saying like it says part 2 starts 22 months later. And I'm like, how interesting to say 22 months specifically and not 2 years later. You know what I mean? Like, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was really interesting, a very interesting thing as well. But yes, the trench. Yeah. I always like it when parts have titles kind of
Mhm.
associated with them. And so part 1 was the hollow and part 2 is the trench. So I'm very, very interested to see where this goes after all this time. But clearly some of these questions that we have won't necessarily get answered right away because it's been so long and they're probably not what is really happening in this moment. But obviously they will eventually start to come back into play as we move along through part 2 and through the rest of the book. So, yeah. But overall, I really enjoyed this a lot more than I thought. Like I said, it wasn't as like, what the heck am I reading? I have
Mhm.
to read this 6 times just to understand what's happening. It's not like Game of Thrones where you're just like, what? And then you go back and rewatch it and you're like, oh, I'm sure I will feel that way later, but I don't
Mhm.
feel as lost, at least right
Yeah.
now, as I expect it to be, which is really kind of nice. So I probably will have to go back and reread more, but I think flipping back to the map so often was really helpful for me to understand the context of like where things are, what the world looks like. I think that was really, really beneficial for me to constantly
Mhm.
be flipping back to the map, which is part of the reason I do like having like a physical book to read from. If you are writing a fantasy, romantasy book, anything where it's not our world, please, maps are very helpful. We enjoy them. So, next episode, we will be covering part 2 of Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood. So, very excited to kind of keep reading. Again, we are doing this series in parts as opposed to each book at a time.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
we will be slowly going through this. Hope you will join us for our next step in this adventure with part 2 of House of Earth and Blood. But please, if you're enjoying our content, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button. Go ahead, give us a rating as well. We really appreciate all of that. But thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yes.